Hello students, welcome to AriserTalent. As you know, we are studying very important chapter of NCERT, that is control and coordination. In my previous lectures, I told you about the neurons. Okay, I told you about the structure of neuron, means nerve cell, as well as I told you that there are three types of neurons: sensory neuron, motor neuron and relaying neuron. Okay, what is the function of sensory neuron? Sensory neuron means which are present in the sense organs. Okay, so those sense organs, when they receive some stimulus, so this is passed from sensory organ to the what? To central nervous system by sensory neurons. Clear? Then from central nervous system it is passed to motor neurons, and from the motor neurons it is passed to the muscle or gland. Fine. So between these central nervous system and the motor neuron, there is a relaying neuron. So thus we can say that the relaying neuron functions as a link between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. All those things we have studied yesterday in our previous lecture. Okay, so now I am going to tell you about the reflex action. What is reflex action? What happens? Sometimes hope you have seen or you have faced many accidents. Okay, what kind of, sometimes these are small accidents, like sometimes it happens that we are scared of something. Okay, then if we are scared of something, we plan something and take immediate action. Suppose you have broken a glass. Okay, then now you are scared that if your mama will come to know about it, then definitely she will punish you. As your mama came to know about it and she comes to beat you at the time, at the moment, what you do? You cover your cheeks with your hands. Okay, so this is reflex action. Okay, this is what? This is reflex action. So today we are going to talk about reflex action. What is reflex action? Reflex action. Okay. What do you understand by reflex action? As I gave you the example that you have broken a glass and then mama came to know about it and now she is coming to punish you, and immediate you took an action to protect yourself from that punishment. So this is known as reflex action. But what is that? Thus we can understand means a response. Okay, here you covered your cheeks with the hands, that is a response because you want to protect yourself from the punishment. Okay, so here we can say that this reflex action means a response which is spontaneous, which is automatic. Okay, so a response which is automatic and which is spontaneous to a stimulation or to a stimulus which give with some organ or with receptor. Okay, that is known as reflex action. What is reflex action? Let me clear you that a response which is spontaneous. Okay, a response which is spontaneous, automatic, which is a response which is spontaneous, automatic, with which is what? Which is connected with when it receives, when a sense organ or some I must say sensory neuron receive some stimulus, then it shows that action. So that action is spontaneous and automatic. So I must say a response which is spontaneous and automatic with what? With the sensory neuron without information or without informing the animal about it. Means it is a quick response. Okay, without the awareness or without the willing of animal, it is a quick response. How it takes place? Now the thing is that we are planning something, as we have made a mistake. Now we are scared of the result means we are scared of the punishment. So now we are planning how can we protect ourselves from that punishment. So that is reflex action, means there something which is going on inside our body, and this is a very quick response. Okay, so I must say that the reflex action is the action which takes place within milliseconds. Okay, as soon as the glass broke and then you got scared of the punishment, and then at the same time you took the action, that is reflex action. Now I must say how it takes place. The thing is, the question is there that how it takes place. So it takes place, as I told you, that neurons are interconnected. They are not actually connected, but they are linked somewhere. How they are linked? So as I told you in my previous lecture that neurons made a chain. Okay, even they are not connected, there is some gap between the two neurons, and that gap is known as synapse. Let me explain you. As I told you in my previous lecture that neuron lie end to end and form a chain. So suppose there are two neurons or more than it. Okay, and these neurons are what? They are forming a chain. They lie end to end. They lie end to end and they form a chain. So what happens here? They are not connected, but here it is a gap, and this gap is known as synapse. Okay. In my previous lecture, I told you that how a stimuli or how some impulse, electric impulse is pass from one neuron to another. How it takes place? I told you in my previous lecture that when one sensory neuron, I must say, when any sensory neuron receives some stimuli, then it pass to another neuron because they lie end to end. Okay, by the process of what? Here is the synapse. The gap between two neurons is known as synapse. Now, as I told you in my previous lecture that the axon terminal, at the end of the axon terminal, it expands and form a vesicle. Okay, it expands, and the whatever vesicles are present in that, what? In that knob. So they release some chemical that is known as neurometer, neurotransmitter. So I must say that this neurotransmitter plays an important role because this neurotransmitter get released and it diffuses in the gap of the synapse. Okay, thus it reaches to the dendrite of the other neuron. Okay, thus we can say that impulse passes from one neuron to another and the process continues. Clear? So this is the way that how one impulse passes from sensory neuron to the central nervous system. Okay, so this is the process. This was the process that how the impulse passes from sensory neuron to central nervous system, and from central nervous system to the motor neuron, and from motor neuron to the muscles. This is the way which we have already discussed. Now the thing is how the reflex action actually take place. This was the matter. Now the process is when sensory nerve or sensory neuron receives an impulse or receives any stimulus. Received what? It received stimulus. Then this stimulus is passed. Or I must say this is electrical impulse. Okay, then it passes from sensory neuron to central nervous system. Here it is central nervous system. Okay, then from central nervous system it goes to motor neuron. Motor neuron, Okay, and what is passing? Electrical. It passes in the form of electrical impulse. The stimulus passes in the form of electrical impulse. Now from motor neuron it passes to muscle or gland, or we must say it passes to effector. Effector is what? That particular organ. Okay. So I must mention here it goes to the muscle or organ or tissue. Fine. Electrical impulse. Now the important thing here is sensory neurons. Sensory neurons are present in the sense organs. Okay, in our skin, in our hands, in our ears, everywhere on our body sensory neurons are present. They are present on the body surface. Fine. So whenever they receive any stimulus, as I already told you in my previous lecture, that there are three types of neurons: sensory neuron, motor neuron and relaying neuron. So sensory neuron is receptor here because it is receiving the stimulus. Motor neuron takes stimulus from the central nervous system and then it give masses to the muscle organ. Okay, whatever masses or whatever order is supplied by the central nervous system, then motor neuron gives that masses to the muscle or organ, then it takes an action. Okay, and that action is known as reflex action. So what are the central nervous system? What are the parts of central nervous system? Generally the parts of central nervous system are brain and spinal cord. Brain and spinal cord. Fine. But the thing here is that whatever masses or whatever stimulus in the form of electric impulse is passed from sensory neuron to central nervous system, that it goes only in the spinal cord. Okay, it does not go to the brain. Do you know why? There is a reason behind it. As I told you that there are two parts, brain and spinal cord, but that impulse means that stimulus goes to the central nervous system, that goes to the spinal cord of the central nervous system. There is a reason behind it, because spinal cord gives quick instructions. Okay, it takes actions quickly, but there is a different part. Generally a brain has different parts for different actions or for different feelings, touching, seeing, watching and for feeling. Okay, it has different parts. So when the suppose if it will receive any stimulus and if will supply it to the brain, then first that stimulus, that masses will go to the some part, that particular part of the brain. Okay, then that brain will take some will give some masses and then it will provide to the motor neuron, and then only motor neuron will provide that masses to the particular part. So it will take a long time, but as I told you, reflex action is a very quick action. It takes milliseconds to perform. So it is generally done by the spinal cord. Okay, so I must say here that stimulus from the sensory neuron, that electrical impulse goes to the spinal cord only. Okay, and from spinal cord whatever masses is, that is again in the form of electrical impulse, then it goes from motor neuron to the muscle organ. Now as I told you, there is relaying neuron. So what is the function of relaying neuron here? That this relaying neuron here, the relaying neuron is present. That relaying neuron work as a connective link between the sensory neuron and motor neuron. Clear? So all the neurons are clear here. Now we will talk about the reflex arc. This is all about the reflex action. Now we will talk about the reflex arc. What is reflex arc? What is reflex arc? Let me explain you. Here is the diagram of reflex arc. Reflex arc is generally a path which is taken by the neurons during the reflex action. Okay. Now what is reflex action? As I told you that a quick response which is spontaneous and automatic, which is taken by the organ for without the information of animal. So let me give you an example here. Suppose it's a hand of a human being. Okay, now what is that? Here he or she is receiving, means this hand of the particular human being is receiving some stimulus. Stimulus is what? Here it is receiving some heat. Okay, so here I have already mentioned that receptor is what? It is receiving heat or pain in the skin. Okay, why? Because it has some sensory neurons in the hand. As I already told you that sensory organs, sensory neurons are generally present in the sensory organs. So here hand has skin on it. So skin has what? Skin has sensory neuron. So as soon as this neuron feels some sensation, feels some heat there, then this stimulus passes from this skin to the spinal cord through the sensory neuron. Clear? Is it clear by picture? As I told you that sensory neuron, here I mentioned that sensory neuron feels some stimulus or feels some sensation in hand, then it passes that electric impulse to the central nervous system. Come back to the diagram, that here it is receiving, this hand is receiving some heat, some stimulus and feeling some heat, then this impulse in the form of sensory impulse is sent to the spinal cord, which is the part of central nervous system. Okay, now this central nervous system give masses to motor neuron. Okay, so this motor neuron, now what it does, this motor neuron send masses or carries motor neurons carries motor impulses from the spinal cord, then it send to the effector or to particular muscle or some gland to take some immediate action. Clear? Here I have mentioned relay neuron. As I already told you that the relay neuron functions as a link between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. Clear? So what is the reflex arc? Reflex arc is the path. Here we can see that masses, here sensory neuron receive masses here, then this masses is passed from where? From hand to central nervous system, spinal cord, then from here it goes to the motor neuron, from motor neuron it goes to the effector. So this complete path is known as reflex arc. Clear? Now let me tell you, let's write here reflex arc. Reflex arc. What is reflex arc? The path taken by nerve impulse. The path taken by nerve impulse during the reflex action is known as reflex arc. Okay, it's known as reflex arc. Now it has 5 parts. Generally this reflex arc means this complete path has 5 parts. Let me mention, reflex arc has 5 parts. Number 1, here we can see number 1 is receptor. Receptor means the part of body which is receiving some stimulus, that is receptor. Okay. Now let me mention number 1. Number 1 is receptor. Receptor means the part which receives some stimulus. Okay. It is a spatial group of nerves which receive what? Which receive some stimuli. Okay, here we can see it receives stimuli. Okay, here this is receptor and it's receiving stimuli. Okay, next part here is sensory neuron. So here the receptor is hand. Okay, next is sensory neuron. Sensory neuron. What is sensory neuron? Sensory neuron are present in the sense organs. They take impulse from the what? They take impulse from the receptor and then they pass it to the central nervous system. Sensory neuron, it is present in sense organ, or here I must mention receptor. Okay, it takes impulse, or I must say it passes sensory impulse from receptor to central nervous system. Let's make it more simple. It passes sensory impulse from receptor to central nervous system. Okay. Now third part is central nervous system. Third part is central nervous system. Central nervous system. Central nervous system, generally it has two parts. Okay, it consists two parts: brain and spinal cord. Brain and spinal cord. Okay, this central nervous system receives sensory impulse and passes masses to motor neuron. Okay. Next part is motor neuron. Next part of this arc is motor neuron. Okay. What is motor neuron? Motor neuron is connected to central nervous system. It takes masses from central nervous system and then it passes to the effector. Okay. It takes or it carries masses or impulse in the form of impulse. Okay. It carries masses from central nervous system and passes it to what? And passes this to effector. And here effector may be any muscle fiber or gland cell. Okay, any muscle or gland cell. Fine. And the last one is, because motor neuron is already passing the masses or impulse to the effector, so the last one is effector. Last part of this path is effector. Okay, so what is effector? It may be any muscle fiber. Last part is effector. What is effector? It may be muscle fiber or gland cell. Okay, so thus we must say that reflex action is the spontaneous action which is too quick, which is too automatic. Okay, and then generally it is it takes a complete path, it goes through a complete path from what? From receptor to the effector. Okay, so there are so many examples of this reflex action which we daily face in our daily life. Okay, so here we studied about the reflex action and reflex arc. Hope everything is clear to you. Okay, so here we talked about the reflex action and the path carried by it. Okay, now we will talk about some more actions. What are they? They are involuntary action and voluntary action. Generally, an animal shows three types of action. One is reflex action, another is involuntary action and voluntary action. Let me clear you. Reflex action, involuntary action, and voluntary action. Okay, so generally an animal shows these three types of actions, or we must say it responses to different stimulus. If we talk about reflex action, we have already studied about it, that it is spontaneous, and when any sense organ feels some sensation, feels some stimulus, then it is passed to the central nervous system, and from central nervous system message is carried to the motor neuron. From motor neuron it goes to the effector. Okay, now we will talk about involuntary actions. What are involuntary actions? Actions which are not performed without animal's will. Okay, so we must say that are involuntary actions. Involuntary actions. What are they? Involuntary actions means the actions which happens without animal's wish. Okay, actions performed by animal without its will. Okay, what kind of actions are known as involuntary actions? Like beating of heartbeat, okay, beating of heart, vomiting, okay, that's not in our control, that is spontaneous, that is automatic, it's not in our control. Blood regulation, so such kind of activities, such kind of actions which are not in the control of an animal, that are known as involuntary actions. For example, beating of heart, blood pressure, vomiting, etc. And next is voluntary action, voluntary actions. What are voluntary actions? Actions performed by animal by its will. Okay, actions performed by an animal by its will. Okay, what kind of actions are counted in voluntary actions? Suppose someone is abusing you. It's totally your choice. You want to give answer to him or you want to avoid him. It's totally your choice. So, such kind of actions are known as voluntary actions. Okay, if someone hits you, you want to hit him back. It's totally your choice. If you don't want to hit him back, it's again totally your choice. So, such kind of actions which are totally in an animal's hand, okay, which is I must say that actions which are done by his or her choice, that are known as voluntary actions. Clear? So here in this lecture we studied about what? We studied about reflex action, we studied about involuntary actions and voluntary actions. Hope all these actions are clear to you. Thank you.